Hey, hey, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good.
Good. I wanted to let you know.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Joe.
Morning. You been to the Artes lately?
Yeah, actually last week.
Good.
Still waiting for bills.
I meet the most interesting people there sometimes.
He was working on it.
You know, we got an echo with about a 3-second delay today. Have you noticed that too, Joe?
Let me turn it up.
I don't know, I haven't bought any.
Frank's trying logging off and logging back in. Trying logging off and logging back in.
I seem to be hearing everything twice. I think somebody has two devices on.
Try logging off, Frank, and logging back in. Try logging off, Frank, and logging back in.
Yeah, mine's
Okay.
fine.
Is it? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Mayor.
Good morning.
What happened?
Maybe Frank's right.
Why, you having a problem?
What the heck going on with this?
The echo.
Morning, Joe. Morning, everyone. Morning, Joe. Morning, everyone.
Hey, Ernie.
There is an echo. There is an echo.
I wonder why.
It's not gonna be fun. You don't have an echo, Joe.
Oh, I don't have an echo. Okay. Well, this is pretty exciting. It looks like it's the last time we'll be meeting like this.
Thumbs up.
Nobody else
Thumbs
finds
up.
it exciting.
Oh,
I'm
thumbs up.
excited.
Back to normal.
Thumbs up.
We're getting them as much
Back to normal.
as possible now, getting them as much as what's possible now. Here's what's gonna-
Good morning. Morning. How are you?
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning.
I'm good. I'm wearing a sweater. I'm going to get out my
Good, Jan.
sweater. I'm going to get out my.
I was gonna wear a tie today, but I
Sitting
couldn't. I had a hard time buttoning my, so I just let it go.
West.
Okay. Okay.
Now I feel like what it's like to wait for the gun to go off at a race.
Morning. Great. Hi, Kelly.
Okay, it looks like it's 8 o'clock. Mara, you ready?
Everything.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the order of the ONCC meeting of Friday, March 4th, 2022 at 8:00 a.m. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Maura, can we have a roll call?
Edison,
Here.
Arlington Heights,
Present.
Arlington Heights. Sorry about the echo. If everyone can please make sure they're muted. If everyone can please make sure they're muted. Okay, Bartlett. Okay,
Yes.
Bensonville, Bloomingdale.
Sorry.
I got you. Bloomingdale. Dave, Chicago.
Yes.
Dave, Chicago 36th Ward,
Here.
38th Ward,
Yes, here.
39th Ward,
Here.
40th Ward, 41st Ward,
Here.
45th Ward, Cook County, Des Plaines,
Here.
Downers Grove, DuPage County,
Here.
Elmhurst,
Here.
Elmwood Park,
Here.
Franklin Park,
Here.
Glenview,
Here.
Hanover Park,
Here.
Harwood Heights, Hoffman Estates,
Present.
Itasca,
Here.
Lincolnwood,
Here.
Melrose Park,
Here.
Mount Prospect,
Here.
Niles, Joe. Oh, we lost Joe. Okay, Joe's
Here.
here. Okay. Norwich,
Here. Here.
everyone make sure you're muted, please, unless you're doing your roll call. North Lake,
Here.
Palatine, Park Ridge,
Here.
River Forest, River Grove, Rolling Meadows,
Here.
Rosemont,
Here.
Schaumburg,
Here.
Schiller Park,
Here.
South Barrington,
Here.
St. Charles, Stone Park, Wayne, Wooddale,
Here.
School District 2,
Here.
7, 48,
Present.
59,
Here.
63, 64,
Here.
80, 81,
Here.
84,
Here.
84 and a half,
Here.
85 and a half, 86, 87,
Here.
88,
Here.
89,
Here.
100,
Here.
214, 234,
Here.
401.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum and very good attendance. Thank you. Oh, did we lose Joe? Joe, you're on mute. On mute.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And I promise to be more cognizant of my mute. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes of January 14th, 2022 ONCC meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion Wooddale.
Second, Hanover Park.
Second,
Second, Hanover Park.
are there any corrections or additions? If not, call the roll to approve.
Addison,
Yes.
Arlington Heights, Bartlett,
Yes.
Bensonville,
Yes.
Bloomingdale's not here, right? Bloomingdale. Chicago,
Yes.
36th Ward,
Yes.
38th Ward,
Yes.
39th Ward,
Yes.
40th Ward, 41st Ward,
Yes.
45th Ward's not here. Cook County didn't come, right? No Cook County. Des Plaines,
Yes.
DuPage County,
Yes.
Elmhurst,
Yes.
Elmwood Park,
Yes.
Franklin Park,
Yes.
Glenview,
Yes.
Hanover Park.
Yes.
Did Harwood Heights join?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Village of Bloomingdale is also here.
Oh, good, thank you. Gotcha. Okay, Hoffman Estate,
Abstain.
Itasca,
Yes.
Lincolnwood,
Yes.
Melrose Park,
Yes.
Mount Prospect,
Yes.
Niles,
Yes.
Norwich,
Yes.
North Lake.
Yes.
Did Palatine join? Park Ridge,
Yes.
River Forest, River Grove, Rolling Meadows,
Yes.
Rosemont,
Yes.
Schaumburg,
Yes.
Schiller Park,
Yes.
South Barrington,
Yes.
St. Charles, Stone Park, Wooddale,
Yes.
School District 2, 7, 48,
Yes.
59,
Yes.
did 63 join? 64,
Abstain.
80, 81,
Yes.
84,
Yes.
84 and a half,
Yes.
85 and a half here, 86, 87,
Yes.
88,
Yes.
89,
Yes.
100,
Yes.
214, 234,
Yes.
401.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. So,
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda will be the ONCC Resolution 2022-1, Village of Hinsdale membership. The Village of Hinsdale has recently signed an ONCC intergovernmental agreement and would like to join ONCC. According to the agreement, their membership must be approved by the commission. The membership resolution was emailed out with the agenda and the minutes. Ms. Kathleen Gargano, the village manager of the Village of Hinsdale, is in attendance to answer any questions. Does anyone have any questions to the Village of Hinsdale? If not, can I get a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2022-1,
I'll make a
accepting the
motion.
Village of Hinsdale as a
Second.
member
I'll
of
make a motion.
ONCC?
Benzo makes a motion to bring our good friends.
Benzo
makes a motion to bring our good friends from Hinsdale.
Second, Addison.
And Don seconded.
Second, Addison.
Oh, geez, Maura, I have to ask you to do this again.
No problem. No problem. Okay, just a sec, sorry. Sorry. Okay. Addison?
Yes.
Addison?
Yes.
Everyone please mute unless you're responding. Bartlett?
Yes.
Bensonville?
Yes.
Bloomingdale?
Yes.
City of Chicago?
Yes.
36th Ward?
Yes.
38th Ward?
Yes.
39th Ward?
Yes.
41st Ward?
Yes.
Des Plaines?
Yes.
DuPage County?
Yes.
Elmhurst?
Yes.
Elmwood Park?
Yes.
Franklin Park?
Yes.
Glenview?
Yes.
Hanover Park?
Yes.
Harwood Heights?
Yes.
Hoffman Estates?
Aye.
Itasca?
Yes.
Lincolnwood?
Yes.
Melrose Park?
Yes.
Mount Prospect?
Yes.
Niles?
Yes.
Norris?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, for Norwich.
Oh my God. North Lake?
Yes.
Palatine?
I don't know where.
Park Ridge?
Yes.
Rolling Meadows?
Yes.
Rosemont?
Yes.
Schaumburg?
Yes.
Schiller Park?
Yes.
South Barrington?
Yes.
Wooddale?
Yes.
School District 2?
Yes.
7? 38?
Yes. Yes.
59?
Yes.
64? 81?
Yes.
84?
Yes.
84 and a half?
Yes.
85 and a half? 87? 88?
Yes.
89?
Yes.
100?
Yes.
234?
Yes.
401?
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? Okay, motion carries. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Maura. Congratulations, Hinsdale.
Thank you very much.
You're part of,
Thank you very much.
you're part of the, one of the best citizens groups I've ever been involved in.
We look forward to working with all of you.
Next on the
We look
agenda.
forward to working with all of you.
Good, good. Next on the agenda is the presentation FAA runway commissioning overview. I'd like to welcome representatives from the FAA who are here with us today. This presentation grew out of a request by the members of ONCC Executive Committee to the FAA to provide us with an overview of the runway commissioning process so we can better understand how runway 9 right, 27 left will be coming online. We had initially said that these questions must be submitted in writing and will be responded to at following meetings, but the FAA has graciously agreed to accept and respond to member questions specifically about the presentation during the meeting. Following the presentation, if you have any questions related to a subject other than today's presentation, you may email them to the website info@o'harenoise.org, and they will be submitted to the FAA for response. Our speaker today is Mel Banks, the OMP Program Manager for FAA. Mr. Banks began his career in support of the FAA during late 1985 as a planning and communications engineer. Initially, he was responsible for various automation, communications, and telecommunications programs. He was assigned to Chicago Modernization Program Office during early 2006. There, he was largely responsible for the development of program schedules that served as a guide for the implementation planning for new and extended O'Hare runways and coordination with FAA stakeholders to ensure on-time installations. He was also responsible for key airport and runway expansions nationwide, along with numerous other projects and initiatives. He currently works in the O'Hare Modernization Program Office, where he has oversight responsibility for the new airport modernization. Mr. Banks has earned his BSEE from the University of Illinois, his MSEE from the University of Michigan, and an MBA from the University of Chicago. Today, he is joined with Mickey Tate, Manager of Flight Operations Group, Flight Program Operations, and Service Unit of the FAA Air Traffic Organization. The Flight Operations Group provides transportation to government officials and the National Transportation Safety Board's GO team from Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, and the tests emerging technologies from William J. Hughes Technical Center at Atlantic City Airport. The Flight Operations Group is also responsible for providing worldwide flight inspection support for 6 flight inspection teams strategically located across the United States. Leveraging a strategic partnership with the DoD, flight inspection ensures the integrity of instrumental approaches and airway procedures infrastructure for our national airspace system, our national international partners, and the DoD to include all active combat zones. Mickey has a master's degree in operations science and joined the FAA in 2012. He is a retired Air Force pilot and started his flight check career with Air Force Flight Check Detachment that is part of the FAA DoD partnership. And with that, I welcome Mr. Mel Banks and Mr. Mickey Tate. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you. Appreciate that introduction. As you mentioned, Mickey Tate is here with us supporting this presentation as well. Mickey is our subject matter expert for flight checks, flight inspection, and certainly we welcome his presence today. And so I do want to thank those of you who submitted your question for today's meeting. What is the process for the installation and commissioning of navigational aids and runway 9 right 27 left? And you went on to say, please provide a timeline regarding navigational aids, burn-in, and flight check. I will tell you as I start this discussion that there is no one answer to this question. Each runway itself is unique, and so the answer will vary depending on which runway you're looking at and at what time and what challenges you run into as a part of this process itself. And with that, we'll move to our briefing, page 2. So this page just highlights those topics we're going to be discussing today. We'll start with a program overview, runway 9 right 27 left key milestones, what's involved as part of a NAVI facility construction, our definition of ILS, instrument landing system, performance categories. We'll talk about various flight inspection types. And then, of course, we'll look at some sample maneuvers as a part of flight check. And then we'll move on to flight inspection challenges, answer your question around burn-in and what it is. And then, of course, you can ask your questions if you have any additional ones toward the end of the presentation or as we work through this process. And so I'm going to start with this page here. The diagram to the right reflects the O'Hare Modernization Program and the runways associated with O'Hare itself. You can see highlighted in the orange color, runway 9 center, 27 center, as well as 9 right, 27 left, along with the date that the runway itself was commissioned. In the case of 9 center, 27 center, you're looking at November 5th, 2020. In the case of 9 right 27 left, you're looking at about 13 months later, that runway extension commission. Now, the unique thing about these two runways and the delta between the commissioning, this is the first set of runways that commissioned 1 year apart. Typically, we've had 2+ years between runways being completed. In this case, we're looking at 13 months. We had a whole lot of things to do within that 13 months that we got done. And as you all know, that period of time was impacted by the onset of COVID. COVID certainly had a huge impact on our schedule, on our personnel at the FAA, and our ability to get out in the airfield for a period of time in support of work that we're doing on the airfield. But you also see on this slide other key project initiatives from top to bottom, north to south, that we worked on as well as we pursued work associated with the O'Hare modernization program. Initial installation of a runway occurred back in 2008 through our present day commissioning that occurred late last year. And so the work has been going on for quite a while on this runway. And those things are reflected in this diagram. What you'll see on the left here are our phase 2B initiatives that we have associated with this OMP project. You can scratch date to be determined unless shown. We're beyond that point now. But the last two items at the bottom reflects our last two key project milestones associated with runway 9 right left extension and bringing it to a point where we do have instrument service available, and then reaching a point where we've achieved full functionality, Cat 2-3 capabilities in this case. I will tell you though, this slide is a good reference to use going forward. If you're in discussions with anyone around O'Hare, I would certainly pull out this slide and use it because it does have key milestones reflected. It does show the relative configuration of the runways on the O'Hare airfield. Next slide. Okay. If I can go back to slide 3, I just want to highlight one more thing on that slide. So what you'll see also on this slide is, as we built out our OMP project, we have 4 new runways on the airfield. We have 2 extension runways, one of which we're currently working on, 10 left, one that we commissioned and serviced back in 2008. You'll see 2 air traffic control towers, a north ATCT and a south ACT air traffic control tower as well. Okay, moving on to slide 4. So this slide specifically speaks to runway 9 right, 27 left extension. The runway itself was extended approximately 3,300 feet. Total length at this point is 11,260 feet. I will tell you that it is the second longest runway on the airfield, next to runway 10 left, 28 right, which is 13,000 feet. We also identify our commissioning again here at December 2nd, 2021. And the other thing I want to highlight here is that, as you can see, the agreement that was reached between the city and impacted airlines occurred early in 2018. That's just to give you a reference of how long it can take from the time an agreement is reached and funding is available until the time that we actually reach commissioning on this runway. The table to your right reflects key milestones associated with the runway itself. Commissioning that occurred on 12/2 with GPS, RNAV GPS services, and visual services as well. Now, the beauty of RNAV services is that you don't need the ground infrastructure to the degree that you need when you're building out an ILS facility. And yet you can still do instrument approaches. Third line, you'll see our Cat 1 or Category 1, and I'll talk about what that mean in a future slide of July 14th. And so we're on the heels of actually getting that done. You'll see an airport landing system. That's also scheduled to occur at the same time, mid-July 2022. And lastly, you'll see when we're targeting, when we expect Cat 3 services to be available, when full functionality of this runway is available. And that's typically allow 1 year between the time we provide a Cat 1 system and when we provide a Cat 3 system. And I'll share with you some insights about that in a later slide. And the bottom diagram depicts just what the initial runway looked like, superimposed with the runway extension, along with some of the facilities that support the runway. You'll see a 27 left localizer, you'll see a 9 right glide slope, denoted by the red dots here. And likewise, on the other end of the runway, you'll see the same thing. Note that there are 4 facilities here that we're looking at. And then you'll see the red dashes that reflects where the localizer antenna array is physically located relative to the airport runway itself. And then you see the pieces of the airport terminal at the very bottom of this diagram. Moving on to the next slide, slide 5. This slide speaks to navigational facilities impacted on runway 9 right, 27 left, to include those facilities that provide for visual aid. The ALSF facility, ALSF, as an example. You can see there are 4 line items here associated with the individual 4 facilities, 2 glide slope facilities, the 2 localizer facilities. And then within the localizer facility, we have our ALSF equipment as well. That's why you'll see it on the same line. The dates you'll see in the construction column, that date talked to when we actually started the construction on the airfield. And that couldn't start until we actually was able to issue a request for a proposal, eventually get to a point where we have an NTP, notice to proceed, which occurred on March 15th of last year. And then the next column, you'll see what we call a building occupancy date. That date reflects when the FAA and its installation team is allowed to physically get into the building to start our installation activities. Prior to that time, there's a whole lot of things going on to actually build the facility, for in the foundation, for example, the obvious things, the actual construction of the shelter itself, power, grounding, signal and control cable, routing. We talked about the construction of the shelter itself. And then there are some infrastructure pieces that go along with that to allow us to pull in those, that cable and power into the facility. So that, and between various facilities. And then there are the not so obvious things that are a part of this whole process as well. We have a requirement to develop a procedure that outlines the routes that a pilot takes as he flies into the O'Hare Airport. And let me say further, as it relates to the procedure, I think what you can equate that to is the building of a road or a highway in and around your neighborhood. Whole set of things that happen to make that possible, to include environmental, maybe some obstruction analysis work that needs to be done. It's a bidding process. That's a part of this effort as well. That procedure development part of this can take 2 years. 2 years to do. Similar to building a road, can take 2 years to do. And any of those activities that preceded getting done have to be factored into how long it takes to get that done. O'Hare, of course, tend to go on a priority list, and we're able to get things done a lot faster than some of the other airports that may not have as high of a priority as O'Hare. But a whole lot of things go on to develop those procedures. I mentioned environmental work. Each and every site that we selected, FAA people have to work in and around and eventually gets codified into our leases. We have to do an environmental to make sure there are no contaminants on the airfield itself, because we have employees working in those areas. That takes a fair amount of time to get completed. The obstruction analysis for the facilities that have been identified and ensure that they don't interfere with airfield operations. That's a process. That's a part of this process as well. And then we talked about the bid process for work being done. All of those things can add to the time that it takes to actually establish the shelter, even before the equipment installation is done. Once the BOD date occurs, our installation crew is then able to get into the facility and the installation work actually begins. At that time, that installation work can take various amounts of time. I usually allow anywhere from 6 to 8 months to actually get in there and do the installation. And some of those installation tasks may be done concurrently on either end of the runway itself. But we do have racks of equipment that needs to be installed in those facilities. We do have the actual equipment that needs to be installed in those facilities. And then once the equipment has been installed, there are a number of tests that has to be performed to ensure that the equipment is working as advertised. There's some standalone tests for the individual unit itself. There's system-wide tests, there's some shakedown tests, some integration tests, testing between this facility and other facilities that the equipment in this facility needs to talk to. And all of those sets of tests have to occur before the actual flight check occurs. And then of course, there's a whole set of steps involved around charting that has to occur soon after the flight check has been completed. That takes us to slide 6. And so on this slide, what you'll see to the right there is just a diagram of what a glide slope facility looks like. And a shelter is put here for illustration purpose. You'll see 3 antennas attached to this glide slope. As a pilot is on final into the airport runway, you'll see that mid antenna that reflects the 3-degree angle that that pilot is on final coming into the runway at. You'll see the upper antenna usually set at 3.5 degrees, and then a lower antenna set at 2.5 degrees. This is the glide path pilot uses. They're coming into that runway. And so we talk about instrument landing, an instrument landing system. What is it? This is just one piece of it. You'll see another piece of it in one of the later slides that reflects what the localizer looks like, a localized antenna array looks like. But it's 2 pieces of equipment. One provides for vertical guidance, the glide slope here, and then one provides for horizontal guidance, the localizer. And the 2 work together. It provides for a 2-directional transmitting system that the pilots use on final to the airport. The signal itself generally transmitted at an O'Hare airport out to a range of around 25 to 30 miles. The pilot can line up 25, 30 miles away, lock into a localizer antenna signal first, and then eventually lock into the glide slope antenna. Next slide. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about our different instrument performance levels. Here you'll see category 1, category 2, and category 3. So each of these category one is the instrument approach in general. That's what you normally have once you install and test and flight check your instrument equipment itself. Typically, when we commission a runway, we also have Cat 1 service available on the runway. However, runway 9 center, runway 9 right deviated from this practice in the past, largely due to COVID. Our team wasn't able to get out on the airfield, work with the city. We kicked off with COVID for several months. As a result of that, installation of the equipment could not occur as it normally does and has occurred on the other runways that we put in place. And there's a ripple effect to this. Runway 9 center delays, getting that equipment in place, also rippled into runway 9 right, 27 left, getting that done. For Cat 1 service, in order to fly your instrument approach, of course, you naturally you have to be certified with instrument ratings. You have to have the avionics on the aircraft to support your instrument approach. And if you're going to use Cat 1, you have to be able to see the runway in a Cat 1 condition. Must have a ceiling height of no lower than 200 feet above ground level. If I can see the runway, if I can see the runway lights 200 feet above the ground level as I'm descending into the runway itself, and I'm Cat 1 certified, and use that Cat 1 service to approach the runway touchdown zone. Also, there's a runway visual range that works in conjunction with that, that provides visibility of around 2,600 feet at a minimum. Moving on to Cat 2, of course, you have to have your ceiling heights. And as the numbers increase, the visibility as you're approaching to that runway begins to decrease. If you're certified with Cat 2 services, of course, your ceiling heights drop to 100 feet. Your RVR itself drops to 1,100 feet, runway visual range, as you're approaching into that runway. Now, what that means is when I get to that 100 feet, if I cannot, again, see the runway, I have to make a decision at this point to do a missed approach, which means I no longer can use those services. And then as we approach Cat 3 service, ceiling heights below 100 feet, 50 feet ceiling down to all weather condition, depending on whether you have Cat 3 A, B, or C services, comes into play. And again, once again, you have to have the avionics equipment on board, certified to fly Cat 3 categories in order to take advantage of that procedure. So as far as the higher categories are concerned, the pros, of course, lower weather minimums, lower decision heights. The cons, of course, more flight checks, tighter tolerance, increased flight inspection requirements, more maneuvers that needs to be done. Keep in mind that when you're flying in Cat 3, the worst Cat 3 condition, you may not be able to see the runway at all. You're flying strictly autopilot into that runway. Of course, you're at your highest level of risk that you could possibly be. Our job is to ensure the safe operations of that equipment that you'll see and work with and use on the airfield as you're approaching, which means all the lights, lighting systems need to be working. All of the equipment needs to be working at maximum performance level in order to be able to fly Cat 3 conditions. Okay, moving on to the next slide, flight inspection. We just want to talk about several types of flight inspections here that we perform on the airfield. And I think it's important that you may want to know about these things. First of all, there's a maintenance flight check. anytime we have a major piece of equipment, navigational equipment that fails, we have to go in, identify what caused the failure, replace those components that are impacted. Our tech ops, technicians go out on the airfield and perform those tests, checks. And then, of course, we have to restore that equipment back to service. The actual restoration of that equipment and to ensure continued integrity of that equipment requires that a flight check be done. And so that's where our flight check crew comes in. They schedule an appointment, coordinate with air traffic, come in and actually do a maintenance flight check. The reason that's so important and it's a top priority, keep in mind that we may have diversity built into our network, but if we lose a piece of equipment, we're operating at 100% with half of the equipment in place. If we lose that second piece of equipment, that duplicate piece of equipment, we may not be able to use that service at all. And so we can go from a condition where we have Cat 3 to Cat 1 or no category ILS service at all. We don't want to ever be in that position. We certainly want to make sure that O'Hare continues to operate at maximum performance levels. And one way of ensuring that is when we do have failed equipment, we are able to get our technicians out to the airfield in real time and make those restorations and followed by a flight check to continue to ensure the integrity. And then we have our periodic flight check. Now, as you know, anytime you're operating with equipment, there's the possibility that components can deteriorate over a period of time. That does happen. And so to ensure that we'll continue to operate in the safest possible way, we go out and do flight checks on our equipment every 9 months in the case of ILS equipment. So every 270 days, we'll have a flight check performed of the system to ensure that it's continuing to operate as advertised. We'll continue to follow the specifications we do flight check. And our flight check team up in the aircraft, which is fully equipped, by the way, they are collecting the data, verifying the data, and making sure that the data is consistent with what it should be. That periodic flight check generally may take a day. It could take more than 1 day. And then the kind that we typically do when we're commissioning a new runway into service is commissioning flight check. Now identify here that it takes, this is a 6-week process. If you look at the amount of time that it took to do runway 9 center, I will tell you it was a lot longer than 6 weeks. We had all kinds of
fleet services, where our consultants can help save time and money.
I'll tell you, it took much longer than 6 weeks. We had every kind of challenge you can, well, almost every kind of challenge you can think of that was part of that process. We had to swap out frequencies, coordination with the facility that we're exchanging frequencies with. Had some interference problems that needed to be addressed. We're working in real time as we walk through this process with our air traffic controllers. They're a part of the commissioning flight check. We have technicians on the ground in real time if we need to make adjustments to the equipment and then circle back around and do another flight check. And so we typically allocate a runway like 9 right 6 weeks to conduct those flight checks. Now, the flight check itself can probably be done in a week and a half each runway in, 3 weeks at max. But we do oftentimes run into challenges. And so we're using an average time window to conduct those flight checks here, making the assumption that there may be some hiccups in the process along the way. These flight checks are also largely conducted at nighttime. So if you can imagine thousands of operations on the airfield during the day at O'Hare and trying to squeeze in flight check during that period of time, they're only going to be in the way. It just wouldn't work well. It wouldn't be the safest possible way we can perform this service. And so we choose to do that flight check at nighttime for safety reasons. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't do flight checks in the daytime, because we do have occasional flight check as we're checking our low approaches into the runway. Certainly don't want to be in a position where we unexpectedly come in contact with an obstruction that may not have been identified in our documentation. And so that's why we do those in the daytime. Check our lights that may require us to fly in at low altitudes in the daytime as well, and at nighttime. But again, those are the reasons we do day flight checks. And then of course, keep in mind that flight checks can be impacted by all kinds of unexpected conditions that occurs. Weather, greatest likelihood that's going to be something that delay your flight check. And when we typically schedule a flight check, typically schedule it for maybe several days at the same time. Expect to be able to get in there and complete one in or one set of equipment associated with those flight checks. Then we go off, we analyze the results, decide what things did work well, what did not work well, what facility performed well as expected, what did not perform as well. What other air traffic that may be in the vicinity that could impact what we're doing at the airport as we're working our way through those flight checks. And each and every one of those things could result in us canceling a flight check for that night. For example, with weather, I can tell you with non-center, we had back-to-back days of poor weather after we scheduled a flight check. And by the way, flight checks, advanced scheduling requests are submitted at least 30 days in advance so that we can line up the flight crew, make sure they're available. They don't have other facilities that they're going to be flight checking around the country. We want to also make sure that our air traffic personnel is available the nights that we're going to be conducting those flight checks, as well as our tech ops personnel. And the coordination of all of those require us to ensure that we get our request in as early as possible in advance of the flight checks themselves. And to give you an example, I have flight checks scheduled at O'Hare for the early April. Those checks were coordinated over a month ago. Okay, moving on to the next page, you'll see some scenarios, flight check scenarios, thanks to Mickey. You'll see a normal approach where we descend from a high elevation down to 50 feet and we run the full length of the runway itself. We're evaluating the signal, we're evaluating runway lighting. As we look down, you can see everything on the airfield. And we're looking to see if we see any obstacles that may or may not have been published in our database. Of course, then we have another scenario here where we're climbing to about 1,500 feet, elevation and doing certain hold patterns, for example. Okay, and then of course, example 3, this is a holding pattern that we may do 12 miles outside of the runway, just to ensure that, and then of course we have from a hole in an approach into the runway down to 2 miles. And of course, some additional information about that pattern. And then the one that I highlight here is the last one, scenario number 4, where you have a ILS approach at an altitude well below grade. So you're flying extremely low as you approach the runway itself, below minimums. In this case, you want to ensure, number 1, that there are no obstacles And so you need great visibility. And you also want to ensure that you have signal, a good signal, all along that approach itself. Next slide, some challenges that we incur. Maintenance team on the ground, they're there to help assist, make whatever adjustments that we can make, and then go out and do additional maneuvers. We have potential impacts on traffic, arriving and departing traffic at inspecting airports, as well as other airports in the vicinity. And then, of course, we can have real-time challenges to a pre-planned maneuver that requires coordination with the air traffic and may require a redo of that actual check. And then, of course, the last thing I want to highlight is the flight inspection of new and modified equipment can take several days and cause impact to traffic in vicinities of the inspected airport. And so before I move on to Bernie, I wanted to just provide a side-by-side depiction of what the airfield looked like in 2005 and what the airfield looked like present day. And you can see 8 runways, 6 parallel, 2 crosswind runways at O'Hare Airport itself. Moving on to the next topic, burn-in requirements. You ask, well, what is burn-in? And it's a fancy name, I guess you can say, used to just the simple operations of the equipment. Now, burn-in only is required beyond Cat 1 operation. There's none required for Cat 1. And as you can imagine, with equipment that will be used in conditions where you have low to no visibility, you want to make sure that that equipment doesn't experience premature failures. And so that's why we do initial testing of the equipment before we recategorize it as Cat 1, as Cat 2 or Cat 3. And so for Cat 2 operations, we need to complete 1,000 hours of burn-in before we check the box and say it's certified to operate Cat 2. For Cat 3 operations, we need to do a minimum of 2,000 operations of burn-in, roughly 3 months of actual on-airfield operation. Now, the constraint associated with burn-in is that you can't do both ends at the same time. You either have one end of the equipment radiating a signal or the other end radiating a signal. There's interlocking capability built into the equipment to ensure that both ends don't radiate at the same time. Otherwise, you'll have pilots confused about what end of the runway it should approach from, given that they've picked up a signal. And then there may be times where we're conducting burn-in, we have a failure, we experience the failure, we analyze the failure, stop the clock, analyze the failure, try to assess what caused the failure. And then once we do that, if it's reasonable, we restart the test and continue the burn-in process. Now, if it's a failure that we cannot resolve, we may end up having to go in and replace out parts of the system. And as that occurs, of course, we need to then restart the burn-in process. That's the reason why we typically use 1 year, as we talked about in one of the earlier slides, from beginning to end of that burn-in process. So you got 2,000 hours, they all go well. You have 2,000 hours on one end of the runway, you have 2,000 hours on the other end of the runway. You can get it all done in less than 6 months. If you have some hiccups along the way, of course, that only pushes out the amount of time to actually get the burn-in work completed. And then, of course, next to this slide, what you'll see in the background, you'll see localized antenna array. And then in the foreground, you'll see an approach lighting system that we use runways requiring Cat 3 service. Okay, next slide. And so that's what I have at this time. I will open it up to questions that you may have.
All right, well, Mel, thank you so much. Obviously, that was really comprehensive. So Mel may have already answered many of the questions you may have. Again, we are available to answer questions directly related to this particular presentation. If you have something broader or something that could have sort of broader implications, particularly moving forward, then we would ask that those be put in writing.
I do have
Oh,
one for you.
got Dan. Dan?
Mr. Banks, this is Bill Wade. I'm representing one of the wards in Chicago. The test part that you do where you're going in below the normal glide path, and I'm assuming that would maybe happen more than once, or would it be a pattern or a single event?
I'll answer that question. Good morning. So, yeah, when we do these what we call below path runs, that's exactly, most of the time there's multiple of those required. We're putting the system in various configurations as we're doing those. So we kind of save those, group them all together, and the technician on the ground will change the configuration of the system as we do each run. But typically there's not a whole bunch of those, and those are the ones we definitely have to do during the day. And there's not a lot of events that must be taking place during the day. And those below path runs are typically only required for commissionings, or if there is an outage and the ground maintenance technician needs us to look at something specifically. So those don't happen a lot, but yeah, and we try to group those all together when we do them.
Does that ever cause excitement among the people underneath?
You bet. I've personally, because we're listening to 3 or 4 radios in the airplane, and I've heard other traffic on the ground calling towers saying, "Hey, there's an airplane diving for the ground." So these days we've learned that as we begin those runs, we have the tower announce, "Hey, you're going to see something kind of funny at the end. Just know that that's a planned maneuver." But yeah, you bet it can get some attention, because it is. I mean, we're well below path, and what we're doing is we're making sure that if an airplane does happen to dip below path, that equipment is telling them you need to climb. And so we're just making sure that takes place throughout that flight regime.
Oh, thank you very much. My concern is less for you flyboys, but for the civilians in the neighborhoods. Does that impact on neighborhoods?
So normally what happens is if you look at and that's a really good question. If you look at the size, the scope of the airfield, especially at O'Hare, normally those maneuvers, they're taking place in the very last portion of that flight regime, normally from about 5 miles in, what we call around the final approach fix inbound. So normally those are, you don't have a lot of development normally that close to those runways that low. That'd be tough, but no, we don't. If there is happens to be a neighborhood or something out there, I don't know of a way that we really that neighborhood would get that information unless they knew to look where we publish our specific information. So we have had complaints. So typically when or concerns, typically someone will call the local FAA office. They will contact us and we will let them know, yeah, here's the maneuvers that were taking place. Here's exactly why. And then we'll publish that information back to the individual who requested it. But no, that's a good question. Normally it's not a big impact just because of where we are in relationship to the airfield.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Frank, I guess also had a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I have a question for Mr. Banks. If he could touch for a few minutes on the subject of the interference between the G5 radios and the aircraft navigation system,
Yeah,
And,
we're not
it-
going to go into that. G5 is a sensitive issue that we're working actively.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Doesn't look like there's any more questions. I want to
Okay.
thank the FAA for the detailed and informative talk you gave today. Mel, Mickey, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for the invite.
Rebecca. Next on the agenda is I'm sorry, there's so much to think about while you're talking. I gotta get focused again. Next on the agenda is a report from the City of Chicago Department of Aviation, December 2021 and January 2022 ANMS reports. I will ask the City of Chicago to provide those reports at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chair, we have two reports. We've got December and January 2022. In the interest of time, would you prefer that I focus on the more recent report of January 2022?
Yes, that would be good. Yes, thank you.
All right, let me pull that up. Okay, we have the monthly airport noise management system report for January 2022. Pages 1 through 3 provides highlights and overview for the month of January. We've updated our aircraft activity based on the FAA's aircraft activity data system for O'Hare, updated through December of 2021 with 61,488 operations occurred in the month of December, bringing the total to 684,201 for the year end of 2021. That's about a 27% increase over 2020. For January of 2022, the airport saw 54,245 operations ending the month. That's an increase of about 42% over that same month of January in 2021, although a bit down from December of last year. Top of page 2, we have our wind summary. Again, wind is a key factor when influencing runway use. The diagram in the upper right corner summarizes the percent of wind occurrences in the month of January. As you can see, we had significant wind occurrences out of the west and south. That resulted in a predominantly west flow configuration for the airport for the month. This is typical this time of year. We do see seasonal winds out of the west and south. As a result, we were in west flow 85% of the month. And our most used departure runway was 28 right with 61% of the operations. Most used arrival runway was 28 center with 38%. And we'll go more into runway use in the runway use reports. Bottom of page 3, we've updated our total monthly complaints, 25,537 total complaints for December of 2021, bringing the year-end total to 304,558. January saw 16,197 total complaints. That's down quite a bit from December. However, it correlates with the decrease in operations the airport saw. Page 4 is our aircraft fleet mix report. The aircraft fleet mix report summarizes the different types of aircraft that fly in and out of O'Hare. We've broken these out into our major aircraft categories: the regional aircraft, narrow body, and wide body. Regional aircraft represented 46.6% of the total operations, narrow body 41.6%, and wide body 11%. The average operations per day were 1,737 for the month of January. 9% of those occurred during the nighttime hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Page 5 is our runway use report for daytime being 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. As you can see, the runway use report for this month, we again seeing predominant use of runways 28 right and 28 center. You can see in the bar chart in the middle that shows the percentage utilization, the dark green being the current month, the light teal being December, comparing that to December. 28 right, by far the most used departure runway, again, due to those wind conditions, predominantly being out of the west. 61% of the operations occurring on 28 right, 21% on 22 left. On the arrival side, we have the triple parallel approach for West Flow, split between 27 right at 24% on the north side, 27 center, 26%, and 28 center on the south airfield with 35% of the operations. Page 6 is our nighttime runway use report for the operations occurring between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Again, as you can see in the middle by our bar charts, 28 right, as well as 28 center being the predominant runways being used for operations for the month of January. 57% of the departures on 28 right and 66% of the arrivals on 28 center. So again, heavy use of the South Airfield continues through January. As you heard from the FAA's presentation, there is still navigational equipment that needs to be installed, completing for runway 9 right, 27 left on the North Airfield. And as
we're not going to get a discount on orange stick stuff.
I'm sorry, thank you, please mute. We'll continue to monitor runway use and report back and update as that navigational equipment is commissioned on the north runway so that we can monitor its use moving forward. Page 7 is the geographical location of our permanent noise monitors around O'Hare. Since we've last met, we have installed 3 new monitors, sites you can see on the right side of the map, on the east side of the airport. We've commissioned new noise monitors 39, 40, and 46. 2 of those are in Ward 39 in the city of Chicago, 1 in Ward 40. And those were commissioned in December, and we have reportable data for all 3 for both December and January. Page 8 is the aircraft DNL report for the first half of our permanent noise monitors. This report shows the aircraft day-night average sound level for each of our permanent noise monitors for the month of January 2022, as well as comparing that to the same month of the previous year. As a reminder, the DNL values are color-coded based on increases or decreases in aircraft noise levels. Red being an increase of 1 decibel or more, green being a decrease in 1 decibel or more. As you can see, we have a number of red monitors. That is, as we've discussed before, we are comparing the noise data to the same month of January of 2021 last year, where the operations were still very low compared to how the operations have recovered since the start of the COVID pandemic. So we still expect to see, again, most of our monitors showing increased noise values as the operations return at O'Hare. Page 9 is the second half of our permanent noise monitors, again, showing the aircraft DNL values for January 2022. We do have those 3 new monitors, as you'll see towards the bottom, 39, Site 39 in Chicago and Albany Park, Site 40 in the Arcadia Terrace neighborhood, and Site 46 in the Hollywood Park neighborhood. All 3 showing reportable data for the months of December and January. Page 10 is our noise complaint report for January 2022. The noise complaint report shows the number of verifiable households that have made noise complaints to the city's noise complaint system. We show, compare the last 2 months as well as the current month. So we have November, December, and January values. as well as the total complaints for January 2022. As you can see, the number of households has decreased slightly month over month since November. That correlates again to the decrease in operation levels between November, December, and January. We saw 198 total households make complaints for the month. Total complaints were 16,197. Again, as you scroll through the communities that have made complaints, a lot of them in relation to flow operations. You can see Park Ridge, Chicago, as well as Des Plaines with the highest level of verifiable households making complaints. Page 11 shows the geographic location of the households that make complaints for the month of January. Again, the airport was predominantly in West Flow, excuse me, and the complaint locations correlate well with that. You'll see on the east side of the airport, many of the location of households making complaints line up with our arrival streams when we're in West Flow. On the west side of the airport, you'll see a bit more scattering due to those departure operations. You also see a cluster of complaints in Des Plaines. Appears to be in correlation with departures departing to the west, and then those that have destinations in the Northeast or East Coast turning back to the east. And so we think those complaints are due to those operations. And that completes the Airport Noise Management System report for January 2022.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Mayor Police, do you have a question or a comment? Has your hands raised?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So with the commissioning of the northern runways, you know, as you saw, over 66% on the south. So is that going to spread out once we get those runways open?
Yes, we hope that we'll continue to use those runways as much as we can once that navigational equipment is commissioned. We're expecting those to be utilized more frequently, but we'll be keeping a close eye on it as those commissioning dates, milestones for the navigational equipment. We also saw, quite a bit of activity on the North Airfield in relation to the construction of the extension. And so we're hoping as that has all been completed, the utilization will improve on the North Airfield, but we'll continue to monitor and bring that data to you.
Ernie, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Ryan, I know I've asked this before, and it still boggles my mind. How do I have 4,100 complaints in Park Ridge from only 31 households? My guess is the majority of those are coming from even a smaller number than the 31 households we reported in January.
Yeah, well, if you're asking how physically can they do that, I believe there's. Am I misunderstanding your question?
No, you're not misunderstanding. I didn't state it properly. Let me rephrase it. I've got 31 households that made complaints.
Yes.
Right. I've got 4,100 complaints, however. So my question comes down to, is it 5 houses that made the majority of those complaints? Is it 1 house that just kept calling all day long and filing complaints? I mean, what is my discerning factor of going? If that's 1 or 2 out of 31, I guess I'm less concerned than if it's all 31 and they file multiple complaints. Does that make sense? Does that question make any sense even?
Yeah. Yes. And I don't know the breakout, off the cuff right now. But we do see a small number of households making the majority of complaints. But this, for your Park Ridge, this is something we can look into more closely and get to see how that spreads out over the 31. I also want to note, and we've talked about this in Tech Committee, the Department of Aviation has for several months now been doing outreach to those complainants that are making a substantial amount of complaints every month. They are contacting those complainants with a lot of useful information, as well as contact information if they have further questions or concerns that they'd like to discuss regarding aircraft noise. So far, we haven't heard back from anyone, but we're continuing to at least to try to outreach to those that are making a high number of complaints. But for your request, Ernie, we're happy to, kind of break out those 31 and see what the distribution is as far as that 44,000 number of complaints.
I know for privacy reasons, I don't need addresses. I would just like to be more comfortable when we get the same set of complaints to know that if all 31 households filed multiple complaints, that's one concern. But if it was 2 households that filed the majority of them, I view that as people who we've tried to help and maybe haven't. So like I say, if it's all 31 households that filed multiple complaints, that would be a cause of concern to us.
Yes,
I appreciate any advice. I appreciate any advice you can give.
Okay, we'll follow up.
Thanks, Ryan. Frank, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ryan, along the lines of what Ernie just said regarding Ward 41, we have 25 homes that are contributing to this, the noise complaints greatly. Do you know offhand if those 25 homes are under the noise contour and if they qualify for sound insulation? And if not, can they get sound insulation if there really is a problem?
I don't know offhand if those 25 are within the contour and have received insulation or are already enrolled, but we can look into that.
Okay, because I don't know if you're aware, but the State Department of Highways erected noise barriers along the Kennedy Expressway on both sides in some of these communities. Yes. And those barriers might have made the sound even worse than it was before because of the reflection of the sound. And if it's the same 25 households making complaints, maybe there's something to the complaints, and maybe a portable noise monitor in that vicinity will show that the DNL level exceeds the 65 DNL, but it doesn't show, in the area overall. But it could be a specific small area that has increased noise levels. And if we could reach out to those people, and then if the noise is higher, reach out to whoever it is that would enable them to get the sound remediation, noise remediation.
Sure, we're happy to look into it further and follow up with you, but just important to clarify any portable deployment that we're happy to do to take a look and get better information as to what the noise levels are isn't going to change eligibility. If the portable noise monitor were to show louder, that's only a snapshot, as we've discussed quite a bit when it comes to eligibility for sound insulation. That is based on that annual 65 DNL metric that really annualizes a future condition and does not, eligibility is not based on a current 2-week snapshot.
I understand that, but as you can see, the last 3 months, Ward 41 had 45, 48, or 42, 48, and 25 homes. That's a relatively small number compared to the 67,000 people that live in the ward. So if those people are genuinely being impacted by this, we should see if there's some form of help we can provide them.
Okay, well, we're happy to look into it and follow up.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'd like to move on to my report. This is the report of the chair. We are planning to move to an in-person meeting starting with the committee meetings in April. The next general meeting will be May 6th, which will also be our annual meeting. We will notify members as soon as we have a confirmed location for that meeting. We have some inquiries about changing the starting time for the general meetings from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We will be conducting an informal poll of the members to determine what the majority prefers. Please watch for that email and respond to it if you can. With the lifted of COVID restrictions, we are also looking at planning a 25th anniversary, which should have taken place last year, I believe, but it was pretty hard to get together, and I wasn't going to do a Zoom 25th anniversary, believe me. Our celebration event will be later this spring or early summer, and we'll keep you informed as to when exactly it will be and where it will take place. Next, our report from our standing and ad hoc committees. With that, I'd like to ask Alderman Dunn to give us a report on the latest progress on the Fly Quiet Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So since our last full ONCC meeting a few months ago, the Fly Quiet Committee has met twice, once in January, once February last week on the 24th. And over these past two meetings, the committee has conducted a comprehensive review of the revisions to Alternative B and Alternative H to further refine those. The committee reviewed primary configurations, primary headings, secondary configurations, and designated long runways for each of these alternatives. The committee focused these refinements on the primary departure headings and adjusting those so that both alternatives were in alignment and were the same for the primary departure headings. So the major difference between B and H now is the primary rotation schedule, which will make it quite a bit easier for comparison. They both use a split airfield concept, north, south, and diagonal. B uses the north, south, and diagonal on a even rotation, third, one, third, one, third, and H uses a rotation of half, the rotation being on the diagonals in 2 of the weeks, and then 1 week on north and 1 week on south. The committee is expected to review the final revisions of B and H at the next meeting on March 22nd and vote on a preferred alternative to move forward. At this meeting, only voting committee members will be participating in the discussion at this meeting. Any guest advisors will be able to participate as non-committee members and will speak at that point on the agenda. The next steps will be to review after selecting which alternative to move forward. Next step is to review procedural topics, including construction impacts, tailwinds, altitudes for turning, and any other issues. Once these procedural discussions are completed, the committee will vote on a complete package to present to the full ONCC commission for consideration, and then to move on to CDA and FAA. The next Fly Quiet Committee meeting will be held Tuesday, March 22nd. If there's any questions, I can take those.
If not, thank you, Bob.
Sure.
Next is Technical Committee. They also met in January. Chairman Summers, please, if you could give your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The technical committee met last on January 18th. CDA staff provided a noise monitor update on the progress of installation and replacement of permanent noise monitors. Site 39, 40, and 46 were installed in 2021. All 3 monitors are solar powered. Sites 38, 41, and 43 will be completed in 2022. Landrum and Brown provided a COVID-19 impact update. Data indicated that the fall months of 2021 were close to 2019 demand at around 84% of operations compared to 2019. At the end of the year, however, Omicron affected operations levels with airlines flight cancellations due to staffing issues. Cargo demand at O'Hare remains high. The committee spent a significant time reviewing the Fly Quiet recognition program. Metrics to be included in the evaluation include fleet quality, airline schedule, preferential flight tracks, and GRE use. There was discussion on how to weight the different metrics. The committee also discussed how to publicize the program to recognize those who scored well and encourage others to do better. The next ONCC technical committee will be held on Tuesday, March 15th at 9 a.m. If you're interested in joining the technical committee, please contact Maura. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any update for the subcommittee, daytime noise subcommittee?
I'll defer to the subcommittee chair, Ernie.
Ernie?
Thank you, Evan. Good morning, everyone. The daytime ad hoc noise subcommittee met for its first meeting on February 10th of this year. We discussed the initial round of what we might want to cover without getting into a lot of detail given the time of the meeting. We talked about the physical aspects of the airspace. Can we make any changes or not? We also talked about the idea of being more involved in technical aspects because as we have found, both the airframe and the engines make a difference. And then we also talked about policy. Could we be more involved in trying to make public policy? The next ad hoc flight daytime noise subcommittee, is scheduled to meet on March 10th of this year. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. Next is the ad hoc nominating committee, and Mayor Sherwin could not stay. If you haven't read it, let me read his words to everybody concerning the ad hoc committee. The nominating committee will meet via Zoom before the next ONCC meeting. Current officers have all agreed to stay on. Anyone who is interested in serving, let us know. Hope all previous committee members will serve once again. Anyone who wants to serve the committee again, let us know. So that's where we're at right now with the ad hoc nominating committee. Any questions?
If anyone would like to submit a nomination or volunteer for the committee, they can email me info@oharenoise.org.
Okay, thank you. Next is report from the ONCC interim director. Maura, you're on.
Thanks, Joe. For the financial report, January 2022, expenditures for the month of January were in the amount of $8,367.11. Can I get a motion to approve the January 2022 financial report?
Almost so. Dennis.
Hanover Park, second.
Okay, Maura, call the roll.
Addison,
Yes.
Arlington Heights,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Bensonville,
Yes.
Bloomingdale,
Yes.
City of Chicago,
Yes.
36th Ward,
Yes.
38th Ward,
Yes.
39th Ward,
Yes.
41st Ward,
Yes.
Des Plaines,
Yes.
Elmhurst,
Yes.
Elmwood Park. Sorry, I missed DuPage County. DuPage County.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Franklin Park,
Yes.
Glenview.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Hanover Park,
Yes.
Howard Heights,
Yes.
Hoffman Estates,
Aye.
Itasca,
Yes.
Lincolnwood, Melrose Park,
Yes.
Mount Prospect,
Yes.
Niles,
Yes.
Norwich,
Yes.
North Lake. Oh, he had to leave. Park Ridge,
Yes.
Rolling Meadows,
Yes.
Rosemont,
Yes.
Schaumburg,
Yes.
Schiller Park,
Yes.
South Barrington,
Yes.
Stone Park, Wooddale,
Yes.
School District 2, 7, 48, 59, 64,
Yes.
81, 84, 84 and a half, 87, 88,
Yes.
89,
Yes.
100,
Yes.
214,
Yes.
234, and 401.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next.
Or
I
you
just wanna-
Missed River Grove.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis. How do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, I just wanted to give a quick update on the attendance policy. We sent out a membership update and reminder in February and had a good response. So thanks to everyone for sending in any updates. And for those who sent in their ethics statement, just a quick mention that the ONCC bylaws do require any designees or alternates to submit an ethics statement. So thanks to those who have submitted. And if you haven't, you can still do that. I'll be sending out links just as a reminder for that. And then thanks to everyone who submitted the outreach survey. We'll be working on that and taking those suggestions into account for future outreach. So thank you. And then I just wanted to thank Ryan Anderson of Benjamin Brown for conducting the the orientation session we held last week. We got a lot of positive feedback on that. I'm glad everyone that attended was able to join us, and it is posted on the website. If you weren't able to attend, both the presentation and the video are there for anyone who's interested. So, and if anyone has any further questions or would like any follow-up on any of those topics, please reach out and let me know. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Comments from ONCC members?
Yes, Bill McLeod from Hoffman Estates. This ethics statement, is this a copy of the one we filed with the state or county, or is there a different form?
It's a different form. It's just a very simple form.
Can you send one to me?
Yes, we'll do.
Okay, good.
Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain comments from the audience.
Dan Dwyer had a comment. Sorry.
Dan.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation today. It was very informative. However, I don't see the correlation to how nav aids are affecting current or future runway utilization. 9C27C was commissioned well over a year ago, yet it largely sits idle to arrivals in East Flow. And that's $1 billion piece of pavement that so far has been idle for that purpose. The 9 right, 27 left nav aids for arrivals that were covered today. However, this is a departure runway per OMP, yet it's largely idle to west flow departures. So I think the larger questions involve why the utilization has changed from the 2005 EIS. And I would encourage any member to ask the FAA about specifically runway utilization independent of the nav aids. And this affects everyone, whether you're a mile or 10 miles away from the airfield. These changes ripple across not just the airfield, but the wider airspace as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else? Anybody else from the audience? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Almost so. River Grove. Second by Norwich.
Call the roll, Maura.
Thank you. I just want to mention, sorry, this wasn't in our talking points. The next ONCC meeting is May 6th. It's our annual
Yes, May 6th.
meeting. Joe mentioned it in his remarks, but I just want to put it out there one more time. May 6th, planning to be in person, and we'll let you know as soon as we've got the location nailed down. So thank you. Okay, Addison,
Yes.
Arlington Heights,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Bensonville,
Yes.
Bloomingdale,
Yes.
City of Chicago, 36th Ward,
Yes.
38th Ward,
Yes.
39th Ward,
Yes.
41st Ward,
Yes.
Des Plaines,
Yes.
DuPage County,
Yes.
Elmhurst, Franklin Park, Glenview,
Yes.
Hanover Park,
Yes.
Harwood Heights,
Yes.
Hoffman Estates, Itasca,
Yes.
Lincolnwood, Melrose Park,
Yes.
Mount Prospect,
Yes.
Norwich.
Yes.
Sorry, Niles, I missed you, Joe. North Lake, you had to leave. Park Ridge,
Yes.
River Grove,
Yes.
Rolling Meadows,
Yes.
Rosemont,
Yes.
Schaumburg,
Yes.
Schiller Park,
Yes.
South Barrington, Wooddale,
Yes.
School District 2, 7, 48, 59, 64, 80.
Yes.
Yes. For 80.
Got it. 81, 84, 84 and a half.
for 64.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I got that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
84 and a half,
Yes.
87. Please mute. 88,
Yes.
89,
Yes.
100,
Yes.
214,
Yes.
234, 401.
Yes.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody, for attending today, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody live for the first time in years in May. Good seeing you today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Joe.
Thank you.
Bye from Fort Lauderdale.
Go off.
you.
Talk to you later.